Well, hello, friends. Welcome to the Tilt and Shift Photography Business Podcast. I'm your host, Bobby B, and I have a wonderful guest for you today. She is a photographer, writer, mentor, founder, artist, mother. She's a powerhouse, and her perspective on photography is so enlivening and romantic and gritty, and God, I just love this woman. And she is going to tell us all about her process today and what makes her her, because that is something that I feel that we really need to hone in on, is understanding who we are as people and who we are as artists, and how knowing who we are as people contributes to our art. And that's what draws others to us. So welcome the magnetic Anastasia Pagonas.
Bobby,
Hi.
you're fabulous. You my elementary school, my favorite elementary school art teacher, Mrs. Hook.
Mrs. Hook. Okay, this is a really funny story, because virtually every time I go out in public, someone will tell me that I look like someone they know.
Really?
Yes. And it doesn't happen, like, the only reason I'm bringing it up is because it happens all the time. Every wedding I go to, nearly every coffee shop.
Mm,
And I finally looked it up one day because this woman was very insistent that she knew me. And I'm like, lady, you don't know me. She's So I went and looked it up, and it's called cousin face.
Ooh, you have a cousin base?
It's a thing. Do you know what this is?
No, but I like it.
It's they don't know what it is, like a sociological phenomenon that some people have a familiar face.
And like it's this 90s cut. And
Yes.
you wear that, like, and she had brooches and patterns with big earrings and short hair. So like, yes, you have the overall.
I am embracing my middle-aged woman.
Oh, me too. Oh,
Yeah, I fought it for a long time.
did you? God, I
Yeah.
love it. The only things I give a shit about are like my joint health and my sleep and like
Yes.
neighborhood being quiet enough. That's all I care about. I love it. Oh, I'm ready.
Yeah, yeah, it took me a bit. I remember, like, when I opened my eyes on my 40th birthday,
Yeah.
I felt this like sense of relief.
Man.
And I think it was just, I mean, it's just another day, but symbolically, I hoped that people would stop asking me questions related to my fertility and my beauty.
Fair. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, on the 40th birthday, I think the sensation I got from what you just described is like, it's over. Like
Yeah.
something's over. I can leave something behind now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's that, like, this keeps coming up in my work as well, and in when I coach people, is
Mm.
this sense of expectation,
Mm.
that whether it's an expectation that I have that they are expecting it, or
Mhm.
it's an actual expectation that they have. So I'm
Okay.
constantly like digesting, okay, is this my expectation? Am I like projecting that onto them, or do they actually expect that from me? It's this
Sure.
trifecta of,
Sure.
like, it feels like I'm on a tilt-a-whirl.
Yeah, the world expects us to be beautiful and sexy, huh? But unfortunately for us, you and I are going to be beautiful and sexy our whole lives, so it's a
I
burden.
think so.
It's a burden.
It's a burden, and I'm now embracing it.
I
Like, because
love it.
I feel like I can embrace it in like my way.
Yeah,
Whereas before it felt like it was someone else's way.
sure, sure. I was raised by like a very beautiful woman, which was my sister.
Uh-huh.
So I always had to be something other than that because like she's the one. She's the shining beauty. So I had to be like, I developed that whole line for me, even to this day. Like, my sister's coming over, get back in the kitchen. Rat sister who's got all this, this messy house that she doesn't want to sit down. Like, I love it. She's my, best friend and life coach. She's an amazing, amazing woman. She's very beautiful, very well groomed, smells amazing, nails, all of it. So
Yeah.
from an early age, realized that I was going to go another direction because that slot was filled in our existence.
Do you have other siblings?
I have a half brother who's younger. He's 10 years younger than me. Yeah. So my
Hmm.
father had a child. So I've seen him I see him once every couple of years.
Hmm.
George. Yeah.
Do you ever feel like, well, I feel like we're diving right in. That's, well, no, let's just keep
I
going.
love
We'll figure it out later.
Oh yeah,
Um,
love it.
do
Yeah.
you feel like your relationship with him plays into how you photograph other people?
Him, my brother?
Yeah.
No. So my brother was always satellite. I mean, I was 10 and my father with his girlfriend had a child and then they moved. My father's from Greece. So his girlfriend was from Greece so for me, my brother has just been, we catch up, we see each other every few years or something like that. But he didn't influence me and I didn't influence him. We're more like friends and we never lived together. So he's not someone who I would say influences me, my
Who
practice.
who does influence your practice?
My father, yeah. So I grew up, I mean, my first sort of love story with photography was my father's photographs,
Hmm.
my dad's photo box. So that's the lore, that's the folklore of I was a little girl and these pictures gave me what I wanted from him, which is to know him. Because my father was 44 when I was born
Uh-huh.
and had lived a whole life and was hyper independent and from Greece. And so he speaks English well, he understands English well, but he doesn't speak English as well. And so there was an age barrier and a culture barrier and language barrier, but also, the old Greeks, they don't relate to women or their daughters and through speaking.
Yeah.
They don't talk to them. No, but it's a segregated culture of
Yeah.
the guys are over here and the women and the children are over here. So the photographs were showing me he went to the White House. He was on a cruise. He danced. He drank with his friends. He was in the hospital once. It was the record of his life that he never spoke to me. So, and I got to import a lot of sort of emotional needs into the pictures as well. Like, photo daddy is amazing. Like, this man, and the father before me was sort of this like door I couldn't open because that door would have opened for me through language, through talking. And so I looked at the pictures and they really gave me access to his history and his story, and I wanted that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I
How,
loved I looked because he was 44 when I was born. So by the time I discovered, so these pictures were made in the 60s on brownie cameras and these really primitive point and shoot sort of original point and shoots that are later in 70s and 80s, 90s. And then growing up, he photographed us on his Polaroid 600. So that was photography for me, was like standing there, in the Polaroid and my dad posing us
yeah.
and he was paying attention to us because he thought that was important. So photography that's what it meant for me to take a picture, was attention and love and history. And I basically, I had sort of decided early on to get all of my emotional needs met by that one Polaroid 600. And it's been true ever since. Yeah, I really was like, look at his shining adoration for us.
Mm.
Obviously, he's making a Polaroid picture. So
Yeah.
that wiring was early, and it was just a total, complete love story. I was
Yeah.
obsessed with holding this thing. And that love story with the print, really, photography for me is all about the print and the book and to some extent the exhibited work, but
Yeah.
mostly the print from my father's photo box.
Because of that. I remember you had said one time, our creative foundation is our childhood foundation.
Oh, who said that?
You said that.
I said that?
You
Damn.
said that.
I say all the time, I'm like, damn, that's good. Who said that? Um,
Damn.
could it not be, right? Because it is right, the sort of aesthetic foundation, I think, is laid in childhood. Right. And then I do think that the photo making process, it's emotional, however we come to it, whether it's like filling a void or meeting a need or experiencing feelings that we want to have, like photography meets human needs for the photographer
Yeah.
first. And so how could they not sort of relate to our childhoods? And that's definitely the case for me, for sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, same here. Absolutely. When I discovered that, when I realized that that's what my connection to photography was,
Yeah.
it it solved, not solved, it brought to light so many of my emotional hang-ups for
Mm-hmm.
a light term.
Look.
For like, and it's definitely a form of therapy, absolutely, like
Yes.
in every sense of the word. But for me it like, and for me it allows me to digest emotion, because for me
Mm.
as a kid, feeling emotion and exhibiting emotion was not safe
Yeah.
by any means. So you learn to shut those off, right?
Mm.
And then photographing families that displayed emotion
Yeah.
was like like totally blew my mind. And so now that's what I'm really drawn to in a photograph, is like, what are you feeling? And like how are you expressing that? Like how can I actually see that? Because I never felt like my emotions were seen, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that's wild.
Well, my favorite, quote is from Ray Romano, which says, "If my father had hugged me once, I would be an accountant right now." So I definitely relate to that. I'm like, yeah, of course, yeah, that's it. Yeah,
Yeah.
just because I know.
Do you find it's therapeutic for you?
Palliative is the word I would use. Feels good.
Palliative.
Yeah,
Oh.
feels good. Yeah, and it's also palliative for me in the sense that it is the photographic process mirrors and mimics and sort of keeps pace with living. You know, it's an act that enables me to engage with what is going on with me, not necessarily what's going on with me right now, because we know that it's the most slippery medium in terms of time.
Mm-hmm.
And yet, I would say very much like journaling is a practice that is grounding, is palliative. It's providing sort of care for me for, these sort of unsolvable um human experiences.
Mm-hmm.
And it also is, for me, something that really speaks back to me. So
Mm-hmm.
I almost look to it for leadership.
Ah.
So not only is it not as a mirror, even not as a mirror, like it's just showing me what I think or showing me what I am, but I feel that my photographic practice genuinely leads me in life. And that's
Mm-hmm.
what just come back to me. So that's not in the shooting process. The shooting process for me is more like the palliative part. Then when the images come back and I spend time with them in physical form, that's when, I really receive sort of, I would say, yeah, kind of creative and sort of therefore life leadership from that process about what's important, about the beauty of my own life, the beauty of others' lives.
Mm-hmm.
So, the sort of messages that are coming to me from the photographs are certainly ones that I need to hear and feel like they are messages that I don't hear from any other type of experience.
Mm-hmm. And you shoot almost exclusively in film, right?
I do.
Do you get I mean, I'll obviously let you describe why you use film, but do you see a difference in that process between using digital and film? Like, is there a
Yeah.
lack of, sorry,
You
how is that
know,
different?
I haven't shot film since digital. I haven't shot digital since 2016. So it's been a long time. I have a few digital cameras. I bought one for content and video. And the process for me doesn't feel like photography, because photography for me is about feeling the limitation and
Mm-hmm.
liking that feeling. So when there isn't limitation, I experience digital photography almost like taking video. And that it's very, very, it's not very pleasurable for me to deal with all that, the back end litter and editing that comes from the digital practice. So
Yeah.
for me, it's an aesthetic commitment first, and it came from my father's photo box. How can I replicate the colors and the forms that I see in these pictures? And I didn't know the answer to that. I was pretty alienated from kind of photographic literacy when I was growing up, and I didn't understand even for years, like the beauty of them was because they were shot on black and white film.
Yeah.
And so once I understood, oh, in order to replicate this, I would shoot on black and white film. So I began that. But then I realized, oh, in order to replicate this, I would actually use old cameras. All of these cameras that were used back then are still in service and can be found and are sort of metal bodied, unbreakable workhorses. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I discovered that it was giving me aesthetically and in the practice giving me sort of what I wanted. And I think that the sort of, like the pleasure that comes from photography for me is just to see something on film.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I like to see what it looks like, just like a painting. What would that look like on canvas with paint? It's an honoring and an elevating and aesthetic, making something aesthetic, and paying
Yeah.
uh aesthetic attention to it. So I think, yeah, I'm just like sort of indelibly wed to film. That all changed. I love digital photography that other people create, but for me, I like to feel that limitation in
Mm-hmm.
terms of exposure count specifically, and light.
Yeah.
The more limiting a film, the better for me. I do use mid-range films, 400 speed films that allow me to not have to think about its limitation. But I've found, for example, slide film,
Mm-hmm.
which demands and commands you to behave a certain way, helpful. I
Yeah.
like to feel it's this small amount of options. That's sort of freeing for me.
Yeah. Yeah. I think we can get paralyzed by possibility when we have all
Yeah,
of
the
the.
tyranny of freedom.
Totally.
I like to know that there's only a certain amount of variables that I'm working with, and I want to move on. Like I love to consider my tools and consider my paint brushes, etc. But my obsession is with what's in the photographs. And so when I found my sufficient tool box and kit, I was like, okay, I've got my black and white film, I've got my color film somewhat, and I just want to shoot. I just want to see how things look on in the within those palettes.
And do you feel like you can predict what's happening? Because one of the things that I love about film, I've started shooting film. I started my career in film, went into digital, and now I'm using it far more in the last couple of years. I
Amazing.
find like it feels like a collaboration, not only with your subject, but with the film itself, because it's going to make up its own mind. Like whether that's because like user error, but also if there's freedom in that too, like knowing that the film itself is going to interpret this in a way that I may not be able to predict.
Yeah, I like that. I like
Hmm.
that a lot. I think, for client work, I will use films that I consider predictable, and they're predictable because I've used them so much. So I know their range of behavior. But I find that I like cameras that behave, that have a voice in the creation process for sure. And
Hmm.
I'm kind of a high volume shooter, so I'm just making photographs all the time. And so for me, picking up those cameras or films that have a louder voice in the process is exciting to me. Let's
Hmm.
see. Yeah, I do like that experience of not knowing uh,
Hmm.
exactly what occurred on the film.
And what about with your clients? How does your client work differ from your personal work? How
Doesn't
do you approach it? It doesn't. I love that.
doesn't Yeah, there's 0% difference. This has been an interesting thing that has unfolded for me over the years, is becoming this like topic that people need and want mentoring on,
Yeah.
which wouldn't have occurred to me 10 years ago if you would have said, is 90% of your mentoring demands going to be the, how to coexist personal and client work? I would have been surprised to hear that would have made up the volume of the demand, but it does. So for me, like I had kind of mentioned before, being a high volume shooter, my experience is waking up in the morning, I'm taking a picture of my husband sleeping in great light. I'm going about my day, say 10 a.m., kids, drop them off, da da da. I'm taking pictures with flash in the car of them getting in and out. I'm
Hmm.
not taking pictures of the children at my kids' school and their uniforms and how amazing they are because of the privacy concern, but mentally I'm photographing everything. The kids that are 5 girls walking in arm in arm, boys playing soccer, the picture making process is always going on for me, whether it's mentally or actually depressing the shutter. So then by, say 3 o'clock, if I have a client meeting, if I have a client shoot, it's nested within that photographic life. So I'm using the same cameras, I'm using the same film, and I have the same spiritual intent. So by the time I arrive at the client's location or at their home, I'm bringing to them the practice that I'm already engaged in as a person all of the time and have been engaged in daily since I was 14. So that's part of the reason why I think the client and personal work is indistinguishable. I think it's indistinguishable because there's been a really long, well-worn relationship for me with my tools and my practice. And then the clients come to me because they want to experience that. So they're being drawn into my work through my personal work all the time. I've built that sort of distinguishable and believable world that they are feel inclined to pay for and step into.
Yeah. Yeah, you mentioned mentoring. What do you hear as the biggest hangups for people in that, in not melding the two? Or I have my own ideas, but I'm
We know
what is it for you?
you know it. So so the idea is, well, I want to do what they want. When I put my arms like this, I'm about to get into it.
Tell me a story.
Well, the idea that they start with is that they may not want that. So when I, work with people one-on-one or in memory cult as a group, the idea is, well, who is they? And what is it that is wanted? So for me, I set up my business from the ground up, which is the only they that will come to me are those that want the it that I am powerfully showing and producing. So there's not a conflict there because I've never sort of advertised something that I wasn't willing to do. So that's the difficulty. So the idea is, well, they won't want that. And it's like, well, then it's the wrong they. And that shift is difficult to decide to lose your current audience, to decide to lose/replace your current client set. But there's two bases for this sort of conflict. One of them is evolution, which is I've aged out of this work. What now? I want to attract a new client base. And that's common to evolve such that you no longer want to produce this work that's sort of diametrically different than your personal work. But there's another kind of more serious thing that can go on, which is creative self-betrayal. And there's a kind of active building of a business that someone with images that the own photographer doesn't like, respect, or want to produce. And so the sort of radical personal responsibility at that point is, the question is not why have you done this? The question is, what benefit are you receiving that's causing you to create client work that you don't like yourself? And then the benefit maybe on top is like, well, money. It's like, okay, well, there's nothing automatically wrong with that. Like, if someone said, can you come create product photography for our, like truck business, we'll pay $1 million. I'd be like, sure, why not? Because that's just purely for money. There's nothing incompatible because I would be doing it for money, eyes wide open. It's not about my vision. But when you create an entire business with images that are meeting some client that you don't connect with and continue to do that year by year, there's just something deeper going on about the idea of needing to be accepted within a group that you don't even respect. So my recommendation for people who are in that process is not to leave your sort of tribal, kinship, peer, or local group, but to replace that group. Because we do need peer contact, and we do need that validation, and we do need to experience our products in a market that has demand for them. So that sensation of replacing, I think, is the right one, where it's not about the, work that I'm making is incompatible. It's the people that I'm making it with is incompatible. And we're in control of attracting and repelling that correct client base for sure.
Yeah, we absolutely are.
Yeah.
And I think oftentimes we don't realize that, it's the one control we have.
And and I think we sometimes don't realize how addicted we are to certain benefits.
Yeah.
Well, it's like, well, I'm doing it for money, okay, or it's like, well, in my area, that's viewed as the most high status type of photography to create. It happens more in weddings. So it's like, okay, then keep it and keep your high status position. And you're like, but I hate myself. It's like, okay, that's the problem, is that your taste is better than the work you're creating. And
Yeah.
so you can do cold turkey, you can do gradual, but I recommend shifting from any position that's creating images foreign with people whose taste you don't respect. I think that's very corrosive. And it's corrosive to the client as well. So
Yeah,
that's
for
like,
both, yeah.
yeah, and it's the photographers can sometimes imagine that no one knows.
Mm.
No one can feel it. I'm just creating, there's just, I'm creating client work that I don't feel aligned with, and no one has any idea, but they do know and they do feel it. And it's, I think, unfair, especially when it comes to weddings, but I think it's unfair. We should be, and the option is always available to us, put it that way,
Yeah.
to really create works where photographer, subject, and photographs are in harmony.
Yeah.
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 And that's been my operational trinity. And I've worked really hard to guarantee that. And
Hmm.
sometimes that's meant working outside of the field of photography. So, for example, I ran an art gallery on a college campus. I knew at that time, years ago, that I wanted to monetarily depressurize the photographs for a season, for a time. I needed to do that. So I had other skill sets and was, already very like developed in the curatorial um, pathway. So I
Hmm.
had that option. My career path includes, probably like about 5 sort of large umbrellas. So I had that option. But yeah, I think that for me, one of the strengths, personally and creatively and in business for me is that I'm uncompromising. I will not. I have not, and I don't. And
Hmm.
I can't, that's an unchangeable feature of my personality. So I have to work with it. So for me, I would rather die.
Okay.
and, and that is because of the immense beauty that I am confident that I can create. And so for me, there's really no conflicts there.
Mhm.
When I look out at the marketplace, locally, broadly, regionally, or globally, I, I, the things that I have to bring to the marketplace are not exceedingly fringe. I think they are incredibly beautiful and in high demand, and have a classic sort of piece to them, where I've
Mhm.
always been able to operate harmoniously, yeah, within a creative and monetary harmony. And
Yeah.
it's by design.
But not everyone has this conflict, right? Not every photographer has this conflict.
Yeah.
Um, so we are speaking specifically to those of you who feel like you are like there's a hiding, there's a like almost like a coy kind of dancing around the subject of yourself, of your own artistic authenticity. If you feel like you're doing that, then this is the work that you have to start doing. So for people who have that like, ugh, there's something kind of icky about this. Like I like shooting weddings, but I don't like the way I'm shooting them.
Yeah.
What would you, what's your encouragement? Like, what do you tell them? You had mentioned like gradual or just jumping off the
Forcefully,
cliff, but
yes.
like,
Yeah, I think alongside of the personal and business actions that you must take, I think the wisest thing you can possibly do is to invest deeply in the community that you want to thrive within.
mm,
So, and when it comes to weddings, my wedding heroes are Ritual Collective, and John Dolan's my favorite photographer. So if I was in that position as a wedding photographer, I would say, find where John is and go there. Go to those artist talks, go to those retreats, buy those mentorships. There's opportunities to become embedded where it won't be this kind of like personal growth slog, like through, confrontation of self. I'm going to change all of this. I think the benefits of being accepted and folded into a benevolent community that says, yes, we love this work. Yes, keep going. No, this isn't you. I think you're better than this. Having a genuine community that is the not only making the work, but has been making the work and has already gone through the transition you've gone through.
yeah.
Find them, attach to them, invest there, have those dialogues, because we need that flanked support in order to evolve, change, take the risks that we want to take. So I think that almost through osmosis, I think the sort of creative assertion that you're talking about is contagious. Yeah, I do think it's genuinely contagious. So
Yeah.
that would be my recommendation for those photographers.
And giving yourself that permission, right?
Yeah.
That you can do it.
Yeah.
It's funny you mentioned John Dolan. I mean, this question has been on the tip of my tongue since we started this. In the photography world,
Mhm.
and this is something that brush like brushes against me in a very bad way. I'm losing, like, I can't even think of the phrase. There's a phrase about, like, when you brush a dog, like, the wrong direction, like,
Yeah. Yeah. Against the grain.
the vision that's coming. Okay, but it's photo critiques.
Yeah. Mhm.
So I started my wedding career doing a ton of photo critiques. So very much became siloed into believing right and wrong, what's good and what's bad.
Mhm. Mhm.
There's this, you're not doing this right, and that really stifles your creativity, right?
Well,
Because you're about to take a photo and you're like, what, this isn't right, you know?
yeah. Well, and that's where that keyword comes in, of finding a benevolent community,
Yeah.
because benevolence is being able to a- actually confer goodness onto people, where it is not based in dogma, but it's based in goodness. So something may be right, but if you're an asshole in saying it, that's my favorite line from The Big Lebowski. You're not wrong, Walter. You're just an asshole.
You're just an asshole.
I come from the university setting, and a lot of my pivot points as a teacher was being able to say, we won't deploy this method. This
Yeah.
method hurts people. Anything that hurts people isn't something that I want to be a part of. So being able to define options without prescribing what option a person should take is mature education. Being able to, as far as I understand it, here's the lay of the land of options. Which one do you feel called to? What are the pros and cons of each? To me, that's mentorship. And then when you get into actual image sets, we can go deeply with a critiquing mindset, but not necessarily within a trusting relationship. Not if it's outside of that. So for me, it's as a teacher always, or even, having a position to be able to look at images in a group setting, a one-on-one setting, different photographer leads. And that's why, I'm super passionate about teaching and learning as a human endeavor. So the internet, has given us the idea that we teach and learn through finding information, and information is what we're after. But I don't think that's the nature of teaching and learning, information transfer. It's a relationship, and I don't believe in masters and mentees and beginners and advanced as general categories. I'm a beginner at this. I'm a master at this. I'm novice here. I'm intermediate here. So I like to dissolve the hierarchical learning structure and instead come to it as forthright equals. And I think photography really lends to this. And Peggy Levison Nolan said this. She said, the playing field is always level in photography, unlike in, say, dance or sports, where you have genetic advantage, and you have, in order to learn, like sculpture, for example, like you can't become proficient in less than maybe 5 years. You can't become a master in less than like 25 years. Proficiency with photography can be achieved in 6 weeks, like the camera. So photography is specifically, I think, rather egalitarian, and I like that about it, where the challenge in photography is really about, I think, strengthening ourselves to chase the situation. The camera is ready and available. We being there with our courage and ideas is the medium of photography. So yeah, I hate to hear this, and I actually feel that, it's like a memory cult is like university rehab for people
Yeah.
who have been hurt by these critique systems, and it's a masculine way. I'm not into it. Men have cooties, obviously. They don't. They go there.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm doing a very much a shedding of all of those archaic, patriarchal, black and white concepts of art, but also in business. And there's just,
Mhm.
it just takes away so much freedom.
Yeah, but I think dogma is easy too. It's a way that it's a youthful way of thinking. So like my children growing up, like what, like they're black and white. They're looking for the answer. It's like a useful orientation to oversimplify, but it also can be just extremely lazy, where to fed answers. And it's like, my question is not always what what dogma have you been exposed to, but what were the conditions that allowed you to love dogma so much? Because
Hmm.
people that go through critiques and just say, fuck you. So there's, what are the conditions that are allowing the person to say that? And so the development of that personal strength in photography, and finding the ground of what is your grounded basis that no one can take from you in photography, I think is really important. And for me, I loved the university setting for all of its good things, but this is the dark side for sure. Is people
Yeah.
can become discouraged, like almost permanently discouraged because of these sort of like genuinely cruel critiques. And I hear stories like this all the time. And to
Hmm.
what end? It's like it's just feeding the instructor's need to humiliate like a young student. So yeah, I hear about this. Unfortunately, I hear about this often, and people do need to sort of shed is the right word. And that's where supportive community comes in again. And
Yeah.
people will laugh about it too and just be like, fuck them. Their wife hates them. Their mother hates them. Their ancestors hate them. Their ancestors are laughing at their photography. Okay.
I love it. You mentioned memory cult a couple of times, so why don't you tell us what it is?
Oh, so yeah, Memory Cult is the online photography community that I run. We have 100 active members. Bobby is one of them, and several silent seats who are able to view all of our content. I think it's a humor first, community first environment where we're making fantastic work. I mean, I have the best possible work that I have seen in the last 5 years is all happening in Memory Cult. It's not by accident that the community is, like I say, relationship first, then information or content. And from that position of safety, I think people feel really empowered to create. And that's, I mean, Memory Call is a workshop. It's workshop format. It's about doing. It's about trying things and experimenting and exploring options in photography. So we are, yeah, let's see. It's 2025 right now. We opened doors in 2022. We've been sold out since founding. People want non-hierarchical learning spaces where we can share our obsession. I think that that's very strengthening as well. This sort of mutual obsession. A lot of us live in places where we couldn't find someone, within 50 miles who shared our obsession. So it's amazing to be able to connect on that basis and be able to, like I think about Bobby, I think about the project that you did with the teenage girls. I'm obsessed with those pictures. We're all obsessed with them. Became like this memory cult forever lore of like, oh, I can't please. Who's gonna behave like that? Like we love photography. We love those pictures. We love everything that was possible with, oh, it's an open call and look what happened when they didn't even know each other, but they were given the creative space to interact as subjects and all of the ethical questions with minors. And, these are the questions that we care about. So being able to, yeah, steward and, keep the lights on in a space and instigate the creative movement in a space where the questions that we care about are being asked. I think that's my role as
Yeah.
the founder, keeping the lights on and all the work of that, and then the instigation and the welcoming and the rapport that people within which people are able to, I think, creatively thrive. That's the good part of the university as well. Knowing that you have your workshop. My degree is in creative writing. You have your workshop where you can go, bring your mistakes, bring your drafts, get feedback, talk, learn, listen, get ideas, recommendations, solve problems together, laugh, fail, be embarrassed, diffuse our built up anxieties. So I think that, yeah, genuine benevolent community is so much more important than information. And that's the absolute central feature of
Yeah.
miracles. We're
Had you
treated.
experienced a community like that prior to creating
No,
Memory Cult?
no, I created it out of my own isolation.
You are a visionary.
So thank you. Yeah, so there's two spheres that didn't overlap, but they overlapped for me. The art world and family photography. So, this was 2007 when I had these interests and they intersected nowhere. There was no hub, there was no library, there was no space in which the concerns of both of those that are sometimes competing, sometimes conflicting, could be addressed. And so I had my idols that were in the art world proper and making pictures in that zone. And then I had my idols within for higher family photography, so birth, wedding, and family. But they were not concerned with some of the questions and the aesthetic standard of the photo book and the exhibition. And so at the time, I was running the gallery and showing works and was connected to the, photographic vein of within photography that is exhibition. And then family photography sort of popularly was and, is still to some degree in a cultural way viewed as totally antithetical to works that are shown as independent art objects. So, the community was formed from like an overlapping sort of Venn diagram that started in me first. And I saw, no conflict in creating a life based on both of those spheres. I thought, well, I've already been doing it. I want to keep doing it. And it's been like years now, whatever the math is, like many, many years, where for me, I have a mutual interest in both of these things. I love the vernacular, personal, family photograph, my own and other families. And I love the possibilities that are open to us in the art world. And when we view visual art in that way, where it's opening something to us through a context, the image becomes open to us as a viewer to experience some catharsis. So the meeting point back then for me became the personal photo book. So you have the person on the photo book, and then I merged them and began creating these hardcover I'd do a photo shoot and then create these art books for families. And then I did that for 7 years straight. And that was my artisan, that was my apprenticeship in the book format to tell a narrative story that is sequential, that where the pages are being turned. But who is the audience for the personal photo book? It's not the exhibition attendees. It's not a readership or an audience first. The audience for that personal photo book is the mother.
Yeah.
And then in time, the children. So, and I live in mother-child world. So it only made sense to me to create products that were deeply for and with mothers.
Yeah.
The very faithful buyer class.
It's a very faithful buyer class.
And I want that, I want that. I am in no way looking to mass produce anything. I love the faithful connection. I have some people I've been photographing for 20 years.
Yeah. Yeah, that's such a good feeling. Hey,
It's
when
like,
you can just walk
that's
into their home, like feel like
such an
you're
honor.
part of the family. You've watched these kids grow up. I have several clients now that I've been with them for like yearly
Yeah.
for 6, 7, 8 years.
Exactly.
Oh, it feels so good.
Yeah, and I think that right, and I think that I don't think I don't think the art world, like the satisfaction that's possible in the art world, I don't think can touch that. I mean, obviously, that's why I've gone in that direction to take sort of the aesthetic standard of the art world, but my practice is always my pictures are for the people that are in those pictures. I think it's
But
for,
also for you.
oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I have a human role. What should I do with my time?
Yeah.
Should I do with my life? I
This
really like,
one wild and precious life.
yeah, and I really like having that role, similar to like a midwife, where
Hmm.
coming into your family structure to provide a service and a role, and it very quickly evolves into a friendship level of intimacy because of what we're doing together. It is very intimate. So that's been where I've, found my satisfaction, and it continues to be just an endless playground. I love family work.
Yeah. Yeah,
Have
me
to
too. I
photo.
find it even more. Well, for me, wedding photography is family photography.
Yes.
Like I see them very much as the same thing.
Yes.
But sociologically, they seem very different. But I'm trying to like bridge that gap.
Yeah.
It's the same thing. They're just sometimes wearing different clothes.
Yeah.
There's
Well,
maybe a few more flowers.
it really is a different art form in the sense that the wedding has an inherent tempo and a sequence of action that is unfolding. So it's very relieving for the photographer, of course, because, for a lot of times people discover weddings and they're like, oh, I
Yeah.
get to just follow the tempo that's already
Right.
and photograph it. And that's for those who want it like to be a fly on the wall, almost like street photography. It's relieving, it's exciting. We go where the drama is. And though we may need to have some sort of like leadership in terms of being a vendor, it's like we're not leading the day and the event. Whereas family work, the when there's small children, there is sort of more sensation of tempo and that there's a kind of independent event, but the work itself, that it lacks that sort of ritual sequence.
Yeah.
And we
Yeah.
have to introduce the idea of what kind of sequence can we even bring to this moment to get people behaving candidly if that's what we desire. And I definitely desire that. I
Yeah.
really like the shapes that people make that I could never direct them into. I'm
Totally.
I'm fascinated. Yeah.
Yeah. People are so much way more interesting than anything that I could ever tell
That's
them to do.
that to do. Yeah.
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 Well, and being
Yeah.
thrilled by that process, like that is photography for me. Like, wow, like what look what they naturally did and the
Yeah.
shape that it took. And my
Yeah.
guidance is gonna come as heavy or lightly as that particular subject and moment may need. So
Okay.
I never choose, it's always everything for me is always a blend of what the moment requires and what I can even bring to the moment because I'm
Right.
my own limitations.
Right.
When there was I have 3 children, the 3 pregnancies and postpartums. Those are huge parts of my life that I was physically, less than able
Yeah.
during. So every single shoot is different for me. But the love for the natural shape that unfolds, that's kind of the center of what I like about photography is what shape can we find in the natural unfolding of events.
Right.
I'm fascinated. And, that's what keeps my interest. I find that, like, I haven't experienced sort of being bored or burnout with family work because I have found that the combination of possible shape and line and texture and performance, I call it performance, like what's occurring is the performance of the photograph is infinite. And
Yeah.
every single family totally surprises me
Yeah.
in the visual shape and line that they create together. So it's fascinating to see that.
Do
On
you do you ever you implied some amount of direction,
Yeah,
but how? Because I find oftentimes if I direct, then they start looking to me to direct them. So
sure,
it's this fine line of
sure.
letting them be, and then also like, can you do this? Like, how do you dance that?
Like a dance.
Okay.
So I really center my method on this idea of improv. So improv versus choreography. I think choreographed photography is beautiful. I'm just a poor choreographer.
Me too.
Me. So for me,
Terrible.
despite having a certain personality, being assertive with a camera isn't my strength. It takes me into an intellectual zone in which I'm no longer emotionally open. That may not be the case, and I know it's not the case for others, but for me, so I don't hesitate to instigate, to direct, to involve myself, to change things that are happening in the environment, but I use them all as levers and tools according to what the situation calls for. So if I have a family that it's obvious that they need instigation of some kind, otherwise their bodies are not making beautiful photographs, then
Yeah.
need me. The photograph needs me. Whereas many times, because people are familiar with my work and what it takes to invest this type of money in this type of work, they're ready to improv together. So part of improv and dance is that everyone in the room or the dance partnership are both improving. So I sort of set that expectation loosely, and they often come ready. So I've had many, many situations, more often than not, where they have I would say, visual aesthetic awareness of what it means to be in the photographic world of mine.
Right.
So they are coming prepared to improv, and with children, so easy because
Yeah.
you want a picture, you want a picture of affection. So you know to hold, to lift, to jump, to twirl, to piggyback, to this, to lay, to kiss. So young children come with their own sequence and their own performance where the mother who's the buyer and the client obviously wants pictures of great affection, so she's being affectionate. However, that said, I have been in environments where I could not rely upon them at all to improv dance with me. I'm telling like long ago, telling them, like, okay, pretend I'm not here, like we like to say.
Right.
But they really pretended like I wasn't there. Like they started talking about paying bills. Like this was not going to be a photograph. And I was like, no, like you're still on a photo shoot that you are paying for. Like you're still tacitly participate. So that was kind of funny. I realized that they like truly, truly didn't have the intuitive or aesthetic kind of awareness. And to be honest, Bobby, I don't as a subject. I rely on a lot of leadership, which is actually why Dee Dee Von Bach is like our family photographer, because she directs a lot and I feel more comfortable as a subject being directed. I'm like, leave me, bitch. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know how to do this. Like, it's kind of funny. Like, I'm of course know about light and scene and being able to direct us into things that look good, but my own self in the picture, I want that leadership. So for me, it's always a blend. It's a blend that's always based in improv. My ideal scenario is fly on the wall. That's where I feel best. Street photography, birth photography, wedding to a large extent gives us that experience. For me, you can't beat that feeling. I love that feeling. So there's a lot of things that I will do on a family shoot to create that experience for myself. And I would say, now it's like a pretty, I would say, extensive toolbox of like very specific things. So to get specific, one of the things that I like to have families do is kind of almost like defining a route for them, defining like I can at times explain this idea of improv. I'm already toward their home if it's a home shoot. And so I'll get us into like kind of like I want their bodies moving. Like that's the essence of candid photography for me, is that the subject's moving. That's the exciting thing for me about photography. The subject is moving. That's
How do
actually
I frame
the
this?
thing about photographing children, is the subject is moving. And I get to respond and relate and improv with that. So I'll make a route for them. Like, okay, we're going to start in the backyard, and I want you guys to have, this, that, start in the swing. And then we're almost like I set a timer in my mind. And it's like, okay, and then when I gesture, I want us to come here. We're going to go up the treehouse. We're going to go down. We're going to go inside, and we're going to collapse on the couch, and we're going to do this. Get music going. Like I'm giving them a loose structure, almost like a play. Of like you are going to be doing things that you normally do, and we're going to set them up in an order that I can respond to and photograph. And that works well when children are 12 and under. 12 and up, different game, totally different art form. Once,
Yeah.
or maybe even 10, 11, depends on them. But, when they cross the threshold of awareness, different game.
Mm-hmm.
But for children, I get the mom on my side,
Mm-hmm.
and that's that idea of scheme, tempo, uh, uh, order of events. It's sort of artificially created a wedding type situation.
Right.
We're getting ready, then we're lining up, then we're going down the aisle, altar, this. It's creating a little bit of an itinerary. And I will definitely do this on location for sure.
Oh,
Because then
wow.
I can just react. So I think
Right.
last time I was down at the Salt River, and the mom this was one of the most compatible families I've ever photographed. They just got it. And oftentimes they get it when they are visual people as well. She was a model, so like, come on, that's the easiest, best part.
Totally.
They're literally in front of the camera for a living. So she's a model, and he's a tattoo artist. So like, they understand the visual.
Right.
So we're going to start down on the embankment. I'm going to be up here. Da, da, da. Then I'm going to have you guys cross the bridge. Then we're going to meet me over here like this. Then I'm going out on the water. Then you guys are going out on the water. Let's go. And so I mean, and the most beautiful photographs are possible when they are relaxed into an itinerary. Because now they're
Mm-hmm.
going from here to there. And what do they do naturally when they go from here to there? Well, they hold hands. Beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
And I am moving myself, not them. So I'm running. I'm like, oh, in my head, I'm like, I see them in the great light. And then I see him reach for his son's hand. And then I'm like, diving because I see it. So it's giving me the sensation. It's giving all of us the sensation of street photography. And what's interesting about me is I didn't even realize that I did all this. It was only upon being asked that I realized I had all these strategies to create and instigate wedding type and street photography like experiences.
Mm-hmm.
When people ask me, how did you get that picture? I'm like, how did I get that picture?
Right.
Oh, well, I guess if I think back to that moment, I said, okay, let's swim. Okay, you're going to get them changed. Then I want you guys to climb out the window because I saw that was something that they did. So, okay, climb out the window and then get into the pool, and then everybody's in the pool, and then just you two are out of the pool. And so for the next 20 minutes, they're like just doing their routine.
Mm-hmm.
They have
Mm-hmm.
that mental setting of like, we are in very expensive pictures. So they're bringing their best to the performance of it, but it's authentic motion.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not a, hey, can you twirl, which I've done. Sure. But it's invites them to move in the way that they normally would. So now, because I know that I've asked them, okay, get changed and then come through the window, I hear them getting changed. I'm under the window. I'm ready. I'm ready for that shot because these 4 boys are going to come flying out the window. And then it's like one of the best pictures I've ever taken.
Yeah.
It's just like so beautiful. It's just so beautiful. And so I think over time, I started out not affecting anything. It was just like whatever the photo gods gave me was what I got.
Yeah.
The pictures, the rate of success was too low for me. I
Yeah.
really liked less than a third of the pictures.
Mm-hmm.
So I wanted a better hit rate, especially shooting film, but also like how to create the most superior product possible when we only have 1 to 2 hours. They're paying me well. They've saved up for this, and I want to maximize being able to show forth, the genuine movement story of their family.
Mm-hmm.
We need to make a video of that. That's
It's so good.
That's a new lecture because that's what I'm looking for. I'm not a portrait photographer. I tell the movement story of that family.
Mm-hmm.
And so that becomes this like really, actually I'm like, that's what I'm doing. And I like,
Ding, 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 ding.
and then when there's even, when there's new types of movement stories to tell, it becomes immensely fascinating. So for example, my friend Rebecca Tossing, she's a writer. She uses a wheelchair. The movement story of their family was incredible to photograph. not only was it unique in terms of I I hadn't, taken that movement story before, but that the movement story was so important to their story.
Right. Yeah.
And it was remote. So being able to produce photographs of that movement story, even remotely, and her and I both said, well, like, we can't believe the pictures that became possible in this like 1 hour. And I'm like, I can't, like, it was just amazing
Yeah.
what improv is possible when we open up that we're not doing portraiture. We're certainly not doing mainstream posed family photography. That's to that. I used to be soft about it. I used to be like, and that has its place. And now I'm like, kill it.
Yeah.
It's I don't want to like hurt anyone's feelings, but we know what it is. My goal is to create the most superior and um most veritable movement story of that family. It's like, is this how you genuinely move together? How do I find out how you genuinely move together? How do I invite you to do that in front of my lens? And then how do I create the space of trust in which you can do that with me?
And just to drive that point home, why is that important?
I think
Their
that's
movement
how we,
story.
I think that's, say that again, last part.
Their movement story. Why is that important?
I think that that's what I like about photography. Is this geometric almost possibilities of limbs and bodies and faces and organic line. I'm not very interested in geometric line, buildings, straight lines, etc. I am attracted to, so like in a visual way, that's what I'm attracted to. So it becomes important for me as an artist. But then I think that the family in motion tells as a symbol the most beautiful, not correct, honest, true narrative of them. And I never want to choose. I love a gaze portrait. I love a still portrait. I like a lot of still photography, like large format, still, forward facing, gaze is like my favorite type of book to buy. But that isn't my calling to create that kind my calling is to sport photography, and it's like the sport of family. Like
Oh wow.
way, and especially too, like the gestures of care and comfort and wiping tears and tying of shoes and the crazy shapes that we get into with babies and changing them and all the shapes of care work. I mean, that's our actual life. If you observed me all day, that's that's the genuinely sort of felt experience that I live with my children. It's extremely embodied. It's, getting dressed, and it's the way that they play and the the movement story in terms of children with parents. Why is it important? I think that it's beautiful, and I think that beauty is extremely important.
Well, Anastasia, thank you for sharing your. Oh, I had one more before I let you go. There's how do you view inspiration versus practice or inspiration in like because oftentimes with there's veins of personal work that we've been talking about, like how personal work impacts or becomes what we actually photograph commercially,
Mhm.
and for ourselves. But what I hear from photographers often is that they're not inspired by their environment or wherever they are.
Um,
Or like how can I photograph this? It's something I see every day. Like those sorts of like that waiting for inspiration to become motivated to then practice photography. Like, are you someone who who practices regardless, or are you constantly inspired, or is that something that doesn't play into
I
your...
experience put cameras as an appendage, like my hand.
Nice.
So it isn't something that I elect to do a little bit on the weekend or something like that.
Right.
I've lived behind the lens since I was a child. So I have it easy in that way, where the integration of the process has been like as familiar and automatic as thinking or speaking, really. And I think I reached for it very young because it was the most natural fit. I totally connected with the feeling of having a tool, a machine in my hand that allowed me to both observe and participate and delineate from my environment. That one degree of removal is calming for me. So, because of that, my sort of, you know, motivation as I experience it goes up and down with my wellness and with my availability and with my capacity and mental and emotional state. And I'll, you know, from that space, if I have an idea, then for me, that's my cue to act on it. There's not a lot of time in between. I don't, this is, you know, the phrase that I counsel myself with and anyone else: enter the creative process. The next thing that we want to make isn't found through thinking about it, writing about it, or talking about it. It's found through trying it and seeing what
Doing it.
happens within the creative process. And the creative process is always available to us. I don't believe in force. I've never forced myself. Like I do hear these sort of gurus that have some skin in the game to recommend like discipline and daily practice as they exalt that idea. Never landed for me, not interesting. I'm a mother of 3 children. The flow of my life is non-uniform. I'm a sprinter. When I have the capacity to sprint, I do. When you zoom out, it looks like consistency and it looks like a marathon, actually, if you were zooming out looking from above. But then when you really zoom in, you know, my life is nested within all of this very intense care work, which is always influencing my wellness and capacity. My son's 9 months. This is an intense time with his needs being really high. So because of that, I don't have any allegiance to ideas of uniformity. I don't need to photograph the same way. I don't need to use the same tools. I don't have dogmatic pillars that I stick to, whether it's behind the lens, my tools, or how I use my time. I follow my feelings. I act on them as much as I sort of physically can when I can. And for me, the encouragement that I'm always giving myself in my practice is enter the creative process. That's where what you're seeking is found. Enter the creative process.
That's where what you're seeking is found.
Yeah. Yeah.
Beautiful. Thank you, Anastasia. I hope you got as much out of that conversation as I did. Some of the concepts that will really stick with me is this idea of knowing that the option is available, right? However you choose to photograph people, however you choose to run your business, those options are available. And it's really about you figuring out what works for you, having the confidence and giving yourself the permission to find that out for yourself. Anastasia, as we mentioned, she runs a subscription-based mentorship community called Memory Cult, and I'll link to that in the show notes. And I also do mentorships, as you know. I have Storyteller School that's happening, getting started right now. And if you are someone who wants to work one-on-one to find this permission, to find this confidence, to find your your innate perspective, and how do I actually go through the steps of bringing this into my work, into my practice, into my client work, into my personal work, please DM me. I can help you. So thank you for being here. If you love this conversation, please leave a review for us. That's how podcasts get found. And if you have any questions, feel free to DM me on Instagram. I will see you in the next episode, my lovelies.